Good morning, everyone. Andrew Schultz, Principal Broker with Own Buffalo here. Welcome to episode 3 of Ask a Property Manager. Today is January 15th. We've got some good topics for you today. We're going to talk about a little bit of a behind-the-scenes peek at the making of a brokerage. So we're going to talk a little bit more about, kind of how Own Buffalo came to be and where we're at today. And then we had a few questions that came in over the course of the week that I wanted to take a couple minutes to answer. One was about heat, when heat is required. One was in regards to appliances, and one is in regards to month-to-month or yearly leases. I have some notes on the screen here just below the camera, so if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at. Thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it. The best thing you can do to help me out is drop a comment down below, throw us a like, throw us a share. If you're watching it live on Facebook, if you're watching this after the fact on either Facebook or if you're on YouTube especially, please feel free to hit the subscribe button. That helps me out quite a bit. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the making of a brokerage. So as you guys know, I've been here at Own Buffalo. This is now, let me think, we've been in the office since the beginning of December, if I remember correctly. So it's been, not a terribly long time that we've been here in the new office and under the new name and things like that. Many of you know, prior to being here at Own Buffalo, I was over at Realty Edge, was running a property management division over there. There were some changes over at Realty Edge. So essentially what had happened is, and I think that this is pretty much public knowledge at this point. I don't think I'm saying anything out of line. Pretty much everybody who's in the real estate industry here locally kind of knows what's going on. And essentially what happened was Realty Edge had sold to another real estate brokerage here in Western New York. And we were all given the option as agents to either move our licenses from the brokerage at Realty Edge to the new brokerage, or find a different place to hang your license, or whatever the case may be. So I am an associate broker with Realty Edge. I was eligible to pull a broker's license under my name, under Own Buffalo. For the last couple of years, I've been able to do that, but I've been really happy at Realty Edge and didn't really see much need to move. When the sale came around, I really sat and looked at what my options were. So I looked at, from a financial perspective as well as from a business perspective, what's the best possible solution for me here? And keep in mind, I don't run like a typical real estate agent business where we do a huge amount of listings and sales and things like that. The bulk of our business is property management and investment property. So we're not your typical real estate agent that would do a deal and then the deal is done. A lot of our business is more long-term client relationship based than just transactional. So that played heavily into my decisions as to where I was going, what I was doing. I wanted someplace that I could go long-term and be set up and not have to worry about moving clients and things like that. We'll get into kind of some of the specifics of what I mean there in a few minutes. So when I found out about the sale of Realty Edge, I think I'm actually going to tell this story today, or parts of it, the abridged version at least. When I found out what was going on, I was actually getting off of a plane in Orlando. I had just flown to Orlando for a conference, for a property management conference, the Florida NARPM conference. If you guys haven't looked that up, that's a really cool conference to go to if you're involved in property management. Definitely check that out. And Own Buffalo is proud to be a NARPM member, so that's a nice little kudos that we have as well. So I went to the conference. I get off the airplane. I have a text message from one of the owners at Realty Edge, their assistant, saying, check your email. And I have a message from my office manager, Kristen, saying, call me as soon as you get off the plane. I'm like, what happened while I was in the air here? What went down? So come to find out, there had been a company meeting that evening, but obviously I couldn't make it because I was on the plane to go to Orlando. And that's when the announcement had come down and things had kind of started shifting. So I'm in Orlando for this conference, and I just kind of was dumbfounded. I didn't know what to do. Should I get back on the plane and fly back to New York and start dealing with the situation? Do I stay at the conference? What do I do? I ended up staying at the conference, which was probably the best possible move for me. And the reason I say that is because if I had come back to New York, I wouldn't have had the time to really sit and process. I would have jumped into action mode as opposed to thinking mode, which I think being in Orlando was the best possible place for me in hindsight, because it gave me the opportunity to really sit and think through what needed to be done and in what orders and things like that in order to continue the operations. When I got back, and the other nice thing is I was able to talk to some people that I respect, deeply respect, while I was down there to kind of get their take on it and really helped to give me some direction. So the people I spoke to, I won't mention names, they know who they are. Thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate it. Once I got back to New York, we started the process of, okay, what's next? Do we move from, the Realty Edge? Do we move to the new brokerage? Do we move to another brokerage? Do we open our own brokerage? Kind of a lot of options on the table. So I did some due diligence. I met with the brokerage that Realty Edge was being sold to. I met with a couple of other brokers here in Western New York to see if I wanted to continue to hang my license with someone else. Excuse me. And ultimately decided that the best possible scenario for me was to hang my own shingle, move my book of business, move my client base under my own, under my own umbrella, and then I don't have to worry about anything like this going forward. I'm never subject to how somebody else chooses to run their business. I get full control. My clients get the added benefit of, the decision, the buck stops here, so to speak. So it's a good situation to find myself in. But there's a lot that goes into, there's a lot that goes into the making of a brokerage. And some of it's very minute stuff. Things like, oh, well, we need a logo, silly things like that. There's a lot that goes into it, though. There's looking for office space. That was actually one of the big concerns that we had, was we wanted to find some office space that would suit us well. We had the option of actually retaining the space that we were already in Amherst, New York, just north of Buffalo. We could have stayed in the office that we were already in there with Realty Edge and just taken over the space when their lease ended, which was originally kind of what we were thinking about doing. But then as I was out shopping office space, I came across to really just an excellent opportunity in Cheektowaga, where our office now is. So we ended up signing this lease and moved in here. I think it was Thanksgiving weekend. We moved everything in, and we were fully up and running in this office by December 1. And then in the process of coming up and everything else, there were a lot of things that we had to put in place. Basic things like insurances, real estate brokerages. We operate with a general liability insurance policy. We have an errors and omissions policy, the comp, the disability, the unemployment, all of the insurances and things like that go along with running the operation. In addition to things like insurances, hey, you kind of have to have a broker's license. So that's a process that takes a little bit of time in New York. It's a lot of paperwork shuffling at the beginning. It really is. It's a lot of paperwork shuffling to get everything squared away. Once we had our lease and we had our broker's license and insurances in place, it turned into, okay, so now what do we do as far as furnishing the office and everything else? We were able to actually buy the bulk of the furniture from the old Realty Edge office that we were in. Got a pretty good deal on it, which was great. We were able to come into the new offices, do our build out, get everything painted up and cleaned. The room I'm sitting in right now is actually a dedicated studio. The wall behind me, I'm pretty sure everybody knows at this point, but the wall behind me is actually a green screen. But it was a well done green screen. We did it the right way. We drywalled the wall because there's like a little bit of a paneling look to it. It had a texture. We went ahead and did it the right way. And we're still setting things up in here. It's not a perfect solution, but hey, we're able to set up and broadcast, which is great. It's a really good position for us to be in. So other things that we had to consider: utilities, internet service, phones, broker's license, the software package. That turned into a gigantic mess. So we're using AppFolio when we were at Realty Edge to manage our rental portfolio. We wanted to continue using AppFolio when we moved over to Own Buffalo. What should have been a very simple process of exporting data from one system, importing it into another system, it ended up taking us way longer than we anticipated, which resulted in some delays with transitioning our clients over. Not really ideal. Thankfully, we have a pretty loyal client base, and they understand that these things don't always go quite as smoothly as planned, and they were willing to work with us. And that's kind of where we're at now. We're in that transition phase where we're moving clients from the old company at Realty Edge over to Own Buffalo. That process is, we're literally right in the middle of it. As a matter of fact, the new software vendor, the new software package that we're using finally went live at the end of last week. So we're in the process of actually transitioning things now. So It's been a crazy couple of months as we've been putting all of this together. I've had an excellent support team around me the entire time. The people that I work with that have helped us out have been absolutely fantastic. And we really are loving the new office space. It's a great space for us to be in, gives us a lot of room to grow, and we're super excited about being here. So if you're looking for residential management, commercial management in the Buffalo, New York market, feel free to give us a shout. We'd be glad to talk to you. So let's move on a little bit. I want to talk about heating. I had someone reach out to me on Facebook, and they asked a question to me about heating season and what constitutes heating season. What temperatures do you need to maintain in your rental properties and things like that. This is from the Tenants' Rights Guidelines as published by the New York State Attorney General's Office. And it references, if you see down here, it references, I think I can highlight this, the multiple dwelling law. That's where you can find the actual wording of this particular piece of law. But it does state that heat must be supplied October 1st through May 31st to tenants in multiple dwellings. I don't know why it says multiple dwellings. I'm pretty sure the same thing would apply for a single family dwelling if that's what you're renting out. But again, I'm not an attorney, so. If the outdoor temperature falls below 55 degrees between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m., each apartment must be heated to a temperature of at least 68 degrees Fahrenheit. If the outdoor temperature falls below 40 degrees between the hours of 10 and 6, so the overnight, each apartment must be heated to a temperature of at least 55 degrees. So that is from the Multiple Dwelling Law, Section 79, the Multiple Residence Law, Section 173, and it also references the New York City Administration Code, Section 27-2029. I pulled this information, again, out of the Tenant Rights Guidelines as published by the New York State Attorney General's Office. That's what the guideline is here in New York. Most states will have some kind of a guideline, especially if you're in a cold weather climate. I've never lived in a warm weather climate. I've been a Buffalo resident my entire life. I don't know if warm weather climates have a requirement for the supply of like air conditioning. I would assume they do if you get down into the southern states, you know, Georgia, Florida, Texas. I'm assuming that there's some kind of a requirement there for air conditioning since it gets so hot. I don't know the answer to that question specifically because I don't live in those states, but honestly, a quick Google search should turn that information up in a hurry. But there you go. That's the requirement for the state of New York. That's something that you're going to want to make sure that you're abiding by and just staying current on that. That's one of those things that you have a warrant of habitability that you're required to provide as a landlord in the state of New York. And it means that you have to have things like heat and running cold and running hot water. If you're responsible for a utility as a landlord, that utility needs to remain on at all times. Things like that. Provide a good place for your tenants and you'll have them long term. It's as simple as that. It's one of those situations where by doing the right thing, you'll find that you get a lot further in the business. So that's my take on it. As far as heat goes, if you are in a situation where you don't have heat, like a furnace goes down or something like that, we do recommend in Home Depot and in Lowe's, they sell a radiant heater that's actually oil filled. It doesn't like emit an oil scent or anything. It's a sealed unit. But what happens is the electric coils will heat up the oil inside of the radiator. And once it reaches temperature, it shuts off. It also has an anti-tip mechanism. So if it tips over, it shuts off automatically. The nice thing is that'll heat up and then it'll slowly release the heat over the course of time. So you get a lot more even heat distribution off of those. And they're a little bit more energy efficient than just running like a ceramic heater with an element that's going to run all the time. So the next question we had was in regard to appliances. Question reads, I had a question for everyone here. What are the tips or tricks you have learned and used to keep appliances from walking off, i.e. a good tenant that went bad? So one of the biggest things that you can do, I don't know as though you can necessarily keep somebody from just taking your appliances out of the building unless you're physically standing there and telling them, no, you can't take my appliance. They're going to take it. They're going to do it sometime when you're not at the property, and you probably won't even know until the tenant's outside of the property. The best defense here is to have a good set of move-in photos from when the tenant moves into the property, showing the appliances, showing the inside and outside condition of the appliances, any little dents or dings or scratches or cracks, shows what the condition was when they moved in, the door bars weren't bent or, there were ice cube, there was a bin for ice to fall from an ice maker or something like that. It gives you photographic evidence of what the appliances looked like when the tenants moved into the property. And then you can compare that when the tenants move out. So obviously if the appliances are gone, that's a pretty clear indicator, but at least you have, that proof that on that date and time that they moved in, that the appliances were there. If you're doing photos, do them with a digital camera that will actually print the date and time right onto the photo. If you're using your phone to take the photos, there's an app that you can use. I use an Android phone, and I apologize, I'm just trying to get the app name. Auto Stamper. It's called Auto Stamper. It's a little red camera-looking icon. Auto Stamper for photo. It is free. There's also a paid version if you want. I don't think I use the paid. I think I just use the free. We just put the simple date and time at the bottom of every photo as we're snapping them. And then that way we know, okay, well, this photo was taken this date, this time, and it matches the move-in inspection sheet that the tenant signed off on. So, it's very easy to document the condition of the appliances at move-in. One thing I will mention, make sure that you take a photo of the plate inside the appliance that has the model and serial info. That goes a long way in establishing replacement values and things like that. If you're trying to match model for model, it's very easy to do as long as you know what model you have, and that's a surefire way to have it. As I mentioned, put the information about the appliances into their written move-in condition sheet as well, and make sure that the tenant signs off on that. And then you may also want to do periodic inspections. I'm not talking like every 2 weeks. I'm talking like once every 6 months. It's a good opportunity to get into the apartment, make sure that everything is operating the way it should. When we do periodic inspections, we're looking under sinks for like leaky pipes. We're checking outlets to make sure they're not overloaded. It's a good chance to get in and make sure that the apartment's not being destroyed and to make sure that your appliances are still there. So that would be my recommendation on how to keep your appliances. Like I said, if somebody's going to take an appliance, they're going to take it regardless of whether or not you want them to take it. But at least you have some recourse there. Next, we're going to move on to the discussion about month-to-month or yearly leases. Do you prefer to let leases convert to month, or renew for another year, and why? So this is something that's a little bit market dependent, I would say. And again, it's a warm weather, cold weather debate, I feel. So in Buffalo, we have winter starting anytime between, mid-October and sometime in November, running all the way through March, sometimes even into the beginning of April. Like our winters are very unpredictable here. We like a 1-year lease because that way we know that we have tenants that'll be in place throughout the winter months, which are the more difficult months to find replacement tenants. There's a lot slimmer selection of tenants during the winter months to place into your apartment. So we like to have 1-year leases that cover through the winter months. That's one of our main goals. Some people like month-to-month leases. I personally, now that the laws are starting to change in New York, I can see the argument for a month-to-month lease. But it doesn't really matter if it's month-to-month or if it's a longer-term lease. It's based on, like when you're trying to issue a notice or trying to increase rent, a lot of times it'll be based on the length of tenancy, regardless of whether it's month-to-month lease or if it's a renewing yearly lease term or what have you. The one thing I will mention is that a warm weather climate, I think, again, and I don't know because I've never lived in a warm weather climate, but I'm thinking a warm weather climate, you might not have the seasonal lulls like what you do here in Western New York. That being said, there's always going to be slow times. Nobody wants to move right around back to school when the kids are getting settled in. Nobody really likes to move during the winter months when it's snowy and icy outside. But I will mention that one time we always do seem to see a little bit of uptick in leasing calls is right after the first of the year. And we've narrowed it down to basically people who are getting married and want to start a life together. They're getting engaged, so it's time to rent an apartment. Or it's people who are unfortunately getting divorced and they decide that it's time to just, part ways and, somebody needs to move into an apartment so that the other person can remain in the residence or what have you. We always seem to see that little bit of an uptick right around the first of the year. Mostly it seems as a result of those two life events. So it's interesting how things like that kind of pan out. So guys, we're getting ready to wrap up here. I did want to mention we do have a new episode of Ask a Property Manager every Wednesday. It starts 10 a.m. Eastern. You can always find that on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Buffalo Foreclosed Homes. You can also catch a replay on Facebook or on YouTube. We try to post these on YouTube the same day that they go live on Facebook. and we've been pretty successful in doing that so far. You can catch a link to our YouTube page over off of our main website, ownbuffalo.com. If you guys click that, please feel free to subscribe. We're trying to get to that 100 subscriber mark so that we can get a custom URL on our YouTube page, which would make life a lot easier for people trying to find our content. And it would make me happy as well. So if you guys, feel like doing a little favor for me, please go ahead and drop a subscribe on Facebook, or I'm sorry, on YouTube. That would be great. Let's see, what else do we need to cover? One thing I do like to mention, if you guys have questions that you'd like to hear responded to here on Ask a Property Manager, there's a few ways you could submit those to us. You can drop them in the contact form at ownbuffalo.com. You can head on over to our Facebook page, just drop a comment below this video, and we'll look at the question and see if we can use it for next week's video. And let's see, how else can you get a hold of us? You can also drop it on YouTube. So we'll watch the comments on YouTube as well to try to pull as many questions as possible. I'm also pretty active in a couple of different Facebook groups. Rent Prep for Landlords is one of the main ones that I troll around in, looking for questions and things like that. Next episode will be January 22nd. We're going to be talking more about winter rentals. Should be some interesting content there, as well as some of your questions. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. This is one of the more interesting things that I do on a weekly basis. I really love doing Ask a Property Manager and helping you guys out. And I do appreciate you taking the time to watch us. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you guys next Wednesday, and enjoy the rest of your work week.